call to order the July 5th, 2016 meeting of the New Bern Planning and Zoning Board. And we'll begin the meeting with roll call.
Chair Paraguay?
Here.
Barry Evans?
Here.
Carol Williams?
Here.
Sonny Alizo?
Here.
Raymond Layton?
Here.
Byron Walston? Dorothea White?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay. Thank you all for showing up the day after the 4th of July holiday. Appreciate that very, very much. The next item on the agenda is approval of minutes, and we're not going to do that this evening because we haven't gotten them yet to approve. And we'll recognize that we're about 4 or 5 months behind
I was going to say,
in
what
minutes.
about those?
I think you'll probably have copious reading material prior to the next meeting so that we can catch up on minutes, right?
Correct.
Okay. The other thing we want to do is welcome to the city staff. This is Morgan Jethro, and she is joining the Development Services staff as the city planner. And does that mean you inherit this crowd?
Yes, I do. I look forward to working with you all. Thank you for having me.
Uh-huh. We'll see. We'll check back with you in a little while, okay? Okay, but welcome, Morgan. We look forward to working with you. Okay, new business this evening. Finally, we have the consideration of request by the City of New Bern to amend the city land use ordinance, Articles 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 16, 17, 19, 22, and 23. This is a test of Roman numeral memorization from elementary school, I think.
That was good, by the way.
Okay. This has been as you recall, this has been a process that's been in works for probably a little over a year, I would guess. Right about
Usually
a year.
over 2 years. You know, the entire effort, 3.5 years probably from when we first decided to really tackle the project as a whole. 2 years of continuous work.
Brad, would you give us a rundown of this process that we've been involved in to get to this point?
Sure, yeah. So I came into this last January, and since then we've conducted countless meetings, spent countless hours. We've consulted with local interest groups, local developers. We've had a study group from your board come with us and have several meetings and revisions on these proposed edits. And we've also had, just this past week, we had an open house for anyone in the community to come out. Additionally, I believe it was last September when we first presented a coherent draft to you guys of this stuff. We posted online and solicited public comment for our, at that time, draft of the ordinance edits. And we received numerous comments and pretty substantial feedback through our online process as well. So we've engaged most interested sections of the community and reached out to just about every group we can think of who have had, and they've all had a chance to comment and look at this process at some point in the various stages. And now we're here today seeking approval.
Okay. Any questions to Brad about this process and what we're getting ready to undertake this evening? I think the good thing is maybe by taking so long to do this, we've been able to involve as many people as possible in this process and get the feedback that is so essential to make good decisions and have a good product at the end. Involving the stakeholders is always a good way to go about this. This is a complex process. We have 17 different articles represented here this evening for approval. And there's several ways we can handle this. One is we can go article by article, and the other is we can approach it as a consent agenda concept where articles that have interest to you or think we need to have further discussion about, we can pull them out and have that discussion, and then, you know, deal with the rest of them as a blanket, and work on individual items and have discussion amongst the board, and also hear from our audience if need be about any of the issues.
We also have available the presentation that was made last month, the PowerPoint. We can run through that another time just to refresh everyone's memory if you'd like.
Do you want, how does the board feel about that? Do you want to get a refresher, or have you had enough of this and seen it enough?
Take about 30 minutes.
That 30-minute presentation? What's the pleasure of the board?
I don't need it.
Yeah, I have
Dorothea, any thoughts?
I do want to say this, if we get a presentation or accept the draft like it is, there's already room for an appeal or to carry this on. So I would say this is a good draft, but nothing is in stone. It can't be appealed or moved on to something else. So I think a consent vote would be proper for this.
Okay, but right now, I want to get a decision of whether you want to hear the presentation or not.
I don't need it.
I'm of the opinion that we should either the entire presentation, or at least we go through the changes that have been made so that the changes are clear.
Okay. Let's look at this from the standpoint of a consent agenda, and you have 17 items in front of you. What articles would you like to see removed for further discussion by the board? Anybody have any thoughts? If not, I have some.
I don't have any.
I would like to see Article 2, 3, and 4 get further review, as well as 9, 11, 14, and
Oh, that's, yeah.
and 18.
And 18?
Size of the letter.
Okay.
That's it. I can't think of the number, but the signage height, I think that we can have further discussion on it.
The signage
The
height,
signage, road signage. As far as the ones that cover the road signage, the tall, the heights.
For,
And the building, I don't think that was clear.
I don't think that was, that's not, I don't think that's,
variance signs?
Variance for the signage and the buildings, that's covered in.
you mean height?
Yeah,
The height
Height
issue.
of the building.
I have a feeling we're gonna talk about height. That's one of the issues that I pulled out.
That's on.
And we also, one of the issues I pulled out, Jimmy, was this board has expressed concerns about the public notice signs we put out,
Right.
you know, that disappear into the background and so forth. And I wanted to have some further discussion about that because the board has expressed that point of view in the past. So if there's no, you don't have any further request for removal of articles, we'll look at 2, 3, 4, 9, 12, 14, and 18. That's my list, but I'm willing to hear anybody else that has a concern about a specific issue.
How many is that?
1, 2, 3, 4,
6, 7.
5, 6. There's 7, I think.
Mr. Chair, did you pull 11 first? Did you say 11 earlier?
You said 11.
I don't need 11, no.
Okay.
I meant 12.
So we have 2, 3, 4, 9, 12, 14, and 18.
That's correct. As you recall from past experience with this particular ordinance update, a whole bunch of it revolves around one topic, which is the removal of conditional use permit from the language in the ordinance. And that covers some whole articles are nothing but removal, so I see no reason to go forth with that. So, yes?
Article 1, 4, 2.
You want Article 1 pulled? Okay. Any further requests to pull Article articles? Okay. Well, let's deal with these pulled articles, and then we can go back if we can reach resolution on them, we can go back, or would you prefer to vote and approve all the remaining articles that nobody has any questions about and get that out of the way? Any thoughts about that?
I'll move to do that, to approve the remaining articles.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor to approve Articles 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 16, 17, 19, 22, and 23 as submitted in this document.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to recommend approval to the Board of Aldermen that these articles, the changes set forth in these articles be approved.
Is 16 in there? I think you said 16. Is that?
16 is in there. The regulation of flood protection is included in that group.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, call the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, well, let's get down to the ones that we have pulled. And we'll start with Article 1. Carol, you want to share your thoughts with us on that?
Yes, under section 15-8 fees, will these fees that would be employed, would it be for residential variances or just for housing or projects?
These fees are, this section is talking about fees in relation to permits, and so we're not actually changing the fees in any way. We're just removing conditional use permits from the ordinance, and so we're taking out the part that references conditional use permits in our fees section. So nothing's being changed about fees, no new fees are being imposed.
Okay. Any further discussion about Article 1?
So one is good.
Well, then I would entertain a motion to approve Article 1.
Second.
Somebody needs to make the motion first. So moved. Byron has made the motion. Barry, you seconded. Any further discussion about Article 1? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Article 1 is sent forth. Okay, Article 2. I asked that this one be pulled, and this is the definition of finished grade. And I think this definition depends on what happens later on when we have our discussion about building height. So I think this is a point that needs to be postponed until we have the final resolution on building height discussed and approved. So I would ask that we, for the time, table Article 2 for the definition of final grade until there's the final resolution of the building height issue.
So move that Article 2 be tabled until final height is concluded or made.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Article 2 is tabled. Okay, Article 3. In the opening paragraph of Article 3 is they talk about the posting of signs for meetings of the Planning and Zoning Board and for issues we're going to cover. And Jimmy, this is what I was referring to, that in the past, the board has had significant concern about the signage that's posted on by the side of the road and so forth, notifying residents that it's very small, very dark, and blends in often with the background and is not readily visible to the residents. I would like to add into that definition of signage, just the word "and color," that it be obvious, because I don't think you want me to just tell you that it needs to be a 12 by 18 sign, orange. But I think that a reasonable color that is noticeable would fit in there very easily.
Which section are you referencing?
Hmm?
Which section specifically are you referencing within Article 3?
This section 1525.
1325. Subject. Okay, thank you, yeah. That's acceptable to us. We'll add that in, yeah.
All we need to add is the word color when we talk about the other parts of that.
Yep.
Anyone else have any concerns about Article 2? We talked about, Article 3.
Three.
It mainly deals with conditional use permit. The other major thing in Article 3 is the final plat approval has been dedicated and changed to fall as a responsibility of the Planning and Zoning Board instead of the Board of Aldermen. Right. There's significant change. It's one of the major changes in significance to this board in these upgrades. So that's basically, that is the summary of the main sections of Article 3 that have changed. Conditional use has been removed. Planning and Zoning Board assumes final plat approval, and then the signage requirement that we just talked about for cover.
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
If the planning and zoning board is gonna assume the responsibility of approval of final plan, if there are any issues that would arise from those approvals, where does that come? Does that come back to the planning and zoning, or does it go to the Board of Aldermen?
If there's an appeal, it would go to the Board of Adjustment.
So an appeal process will start at that point.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, we've had a little discussion about Article 3. I think it probably is appropriate after each one of these articles, if we have any comments from the public that about Article 3 that they would like to weigh in on, we'd be glad to hear from you. Anyone in the audience would like to speak about the changes in Article 3 of the land use ordinance? Okay. Entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Aldermen the approval of the changes in Article 3 with the addition of the word color into the signage requirements in section
15-25.
Is there a motion?
Make a motion that we recommend approval of revisions to Article 3 with the addition of color in section 1525.
Is there a second?
Second.
Have a second. Any further discussion regarding Article 3? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Article 4 is a very long article with lots of processes involved in it. In summary, I think we're looking at a lot of conditional use being removed. We have moved the site plan review requirement up into this section. We've eliminated the need for a sketch plan. We have several instances where the department name change has occurred from planning and inspections to developmental services. And again, from the process standpoint, the final plat is required to be approved by the Planning and Zoning Board. Anyone else have any comments about Article 4? My main concern about Article 4 is the responsibility of the Planning and Zoning Board to approve final plats. And the way it's written, we get an 8.5 by 11 copy to look at to approve. Many final plats you won't be able to read at 8.5 by 11. And I think if we're going to take this role seriously in approving final plats, that we need to be able to see them. If you look at our general plan requirements, we get 18 by 24 documents. And now for something that's really significant, the final plat approval, we're getting 8.5 by 11s. I know they've been reviewed by the city staff, but I think from the board's perspective, we deserve something that we can read and see.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Other than being available down at City Hall, what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, they'll be submitted to the board with your regular package of information prior to the board meeting so that you can have an opportunity to review the final plats that we're going to be requested to approve. Now, with that in mind, what is a size that you feel like would be reasonable?
18 by 24?
18 by 24, no less than 11 by 17.
No, I think that's too small, I really do. I think,
You want the 18 by 24?
yeah.
That's good.
Then
Where's that, in what section?
This is 15-79 major subdivision approval process, and it's specifically on page 25, line 983, or 985 actually, sorry.
yeah, there it is highlighted.
Okay.
If we-
Proposing, was it 18 by 24, is that what I heard?
18 by 24, yes.
Okay.
That's the size you receive for the general plan.
Hmm?
That's the size you receive for the
Yeah.
general plan.
And that's the required, it's also the required size for final plat to
Right.
be recorded. So it keeps continuity for the submit applicant as well as the board having something that they can overlay. If they have a light table and make sure the change, there's no significant changes to the final plat versus the approved general plan. Any other comments or thoughts about Article 4? I'll ask the same thing to the audience, if anyone would like to comment about the changes submitted and requested by the city for Article 4 of the land use ordinance. Okay. Is there a motion to approve Article 4 and recommend its approval to the Board of Aldermen with the change to the final plat size submitted to the Board of Planning and Zoning Board from 8.5, 11 to 18 by 24?
I'll make a motion that we accept Article 4 with changing the final plat size from 8.5 by 11 to 18 to 24.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Oh, one moment, actually. You might want to request additional copies, because right now we only want one copy of that, and then we run off the additional copies. But if we're going to be getting multiple big copies, we want more than one for you guys, I suppose.
I
Well,
see what you're saying, so get one for each.
So 10,
Yeah.
10 copies as opposed to one?
yeah.
10 copies.
Thank you.
I think the assumption was if they gave us 8.5 by 11, you guys would run them off on the copy machine, send them. But if we're going to go that big, I think that responsibility should fall on the applicant.
Right.
So that's a good catch.
What electronic, do we require any sort of electronic format? I haven't seen that in here. We would probably want to get them in PDF as well. I know that's how those are distributed. That keeps the city from having to scan those and worry about any kind of.
Yeah, during our department review, we do get an electronic copy, but that can be added to it because it'll make it easier for everyone.
Well, it just keeps the city staff from having to scan that and then getting into scale issues, anything. If we have the applicant provide that information, then, it's information.
General plans
Yeah.
are required to provide a digital
That's correct.
as well, so that would be.
Yes.
So 10 copies, digital format, and 18 by 24.
Yes, sir. I'd like to amend the motion to add 10 copies as well as electronic format for distribution by staff.
Is that an acceptable? Yes. It's an accepted amendment. We'll vote on the amended then.
Did we have a second?
Yeah.
Okay.
Byron, a second.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have an amended motion for us now with the changes that were just talked about, going to an 18 by 24 size, 10 copies, and a digital copy as well. That's the only change we're making to Article 4.
I would also, sorry?
We're gonna have, is that-
The
did you
digital
say
copy,
that?
electronic, yeah.
It wasn't noted at the beginning of the discussion of Article 4, but we also relocated all references to planned unit developments from, it was spread throughout 3 different articles, and it's a subdivision process here, not a zoning process. So it was incorrectly located, and the information was difficult to get to. So we've consolidated it and appended it to the end of this article, and that's available there for you to see. Page 28 and 29. And I don't know if you guys had any issues with it, because we haven't changed any of the language, we've just relocated it.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that you were voting on that as well.
I want to make sure I'm reading right here. Line 1102,
Excuse me?
1102, the reference that you were speaking of.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
You'll note further back in that some of these articles that we've already approved deleted planned unit developments to several other articles to consolidate it up here, so. It's all still there. And it's, one other topic got relocated too, I forget which one it was.
The site plan review?
Yeah, site plan review got relocated into the process. Okay, we have an amended motion before us. All in favor of the amended motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Article 4 has been recommended to the Board of Aldermen for approval. Okay, Article 9. The main thing about Article 9 that I want everybody on the board to understand is the addition of a new zoning classification, a C3H. And I think that bears some discussion amongst us and might have some comments from those in the audience. So, any other topics in Article 9 that the board would like to have discussed?
No.
Okay.
Question. Since we talk about height, again, should we put this off until we get that definition of height clarified?
I don't think that this relates to height.
It doesn't relate to building height.
It somewhat relates. See, just skipping ahead a little bit, we previously have a 35-foot building height limit throughout the city, which could be modified through various permits. And in doing away with that, we found the necessity to create an exceptionally tall district, because currently we can approve a theoretically unlimited amount of height through the conditional use permits. But if we were to set maximum building heights for each of the zones, we need some way to get above that in specific, very specialized cases, which if you read through the section 4 there, on page 35, line 1404, if you read through that paragraph, you can see it's very, very specific, and it's just related to things in the commercial overlays already. It's for stuff like the hospital, if they want to build up past 60 feet, that sort of thing. But it is kind of related to height because of that change from the 35-foot modified by permits to a zoning by zoning. But I don't know if you found that controversial.
I can just report that the working group, which Barry was part of and Jimmy was part of, that back in October in the fall were working through these things. had no trouble with the new zoning height table as a concept. We were concerned about the original proposed heights, and the way we dealt with that was, and recommended to be dealt with, was a zoning class that would allow extra height, but it had to come back to this board to be approval, rather than it just be out there that they can go do it in a table, that it requires study and action by this board to allow such an extraordinary height in the city of New Bern. So again, what we're trying to do is put another layer of overview and approval into something that is totally out of character for the rest of the zoning classifications we have in the city of New Bern, but still allow for some extreme instances where, like Brad says, if the hospital needs to have a 5th or 6th floor to accommodate the needs of the area. Comments from the audience? Anyone like to comment about the zoning, the height tables for the city? If so, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
Joe Mansfield, 315 George Street. I don't object to the new classification, but our understanding of it is that it is restricted to certain parts of the city, and I did not hear that discussed.
Brad, I think Brad mentioned it, you just didn't pick it up. Hit it again, Brad.
It is restricted to certain overlays, the Noose Boulevard overlay, the MLK, the Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard overlay, and to the sign overlay, which are our major commercial corridors currently. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions the board might have for Brad about changes to Article 9? If not, I'll entertain a motion to, hold on, Nancy?
My name is Nancy Hollows. I live at 4438 River Shore Drive. And I just had a question, Mr. Chairman, about, is Article 9, are you approving completely the whole zoning heights as presented, or only that one new one?
No, we're approving the table that's set forth here, and trying to have a complete understanding of this, of the new zoning classification that we've never had before. But we will be approving that, by approving Article 9, that table that is written here will be approved.
Is that the one with the chart?
Yes.
Okay, we have some questions about that. What page are you on?
35.
35?
35.
Okay.
Line 1404.
We'd like to speak about that when you get to page 45. If I can defer my comments to when you get to page 45. To 45, 46 to 48.
That's Article 12.
Is that Article 12? Okay,
Yes.
thank
Yeah, when
you.
we get to 46, when we start talking about building height, we're going to go into a much more detailed conversation.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we're dealing with Article 9 at the present time, which has been brought out, does include approval of the height limits per zoning classification. Chair would entertain a motion to,
I'm confused.
Okay.
Are we going to adding that it will have to come back to the board if they want to do an additional height?
It's a zoning classification, so if they want to be able to have that height, they have to come to this board to apply for a rezoning.
yeah. exceed existing allow, they would have to rezone, which comes back here.
And ultimately to the Board of Aldermen for approval also.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions? Chair would entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we approve Article 9. I think we made any adjustments to that today.
No.
I second it.
Can we have a motion and a second? Further discussion?
I'll second. You did?
And we have a second. Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we get to Article 12. Article 12, kind of as a summary, has a table with minimum square feet for single-family attached homes, which is a change, minimum lot width for single-family attached homes, a new chart for setback for single-family attached homes, and we then enter into the world of building heights. I know there's nobody out there who wants to talk about building height, so we'll just move right on that. Anyone who would like to talk about the proposed changes to Article 12, be glad to hear from you.
Again, for the record, Joe Mansfield, 315 George Street, which is in the Historic District. Some of the changes that were made or are suggested are not what we would like to see, and I say we, there's a small group of us who have been working on these ordinances, working with Brad and Jeff, and I will add parenthetically, they've done a very good job. So that's overall, I think we're all very pleased, and they've worked with us very well. We are requesting an exception for the Downtown Historic District to read as follows. Within the locally designated historic district, we recommend that height be limited to 35 feet above finished grade. Back to that. Measured to the cornice line to a maximum of 50 feet to the highest point of the roof in all zoning classifications. We also object to removal of the words above mean sea level in the residential waterfront overlay district, and recommend it read as detailed in Article 23, Newburgh Waterfront Overlay. No building or structure in the residential waterfront overlay shall exceed a height of 44 feet above mean sea level, measured to the cornice line of said structure. I believe that's already in the ordinances, and the changes proposed would remove that 44 feet restriction. Do you want to comment on the finished grade item too?
Sure.
We recommend that within the locally designated historic districts, in areas not prone to flooding, or outside the floodplain, the finished grade level should be no more than 2 feet higher than the lowest adjacent lot level. If you don't define finished grade in some numerical way, anyone can decide to fill their lot into a higher level, and that could cause possible potential problems for runoff water onto neighboring lots or out into the street and cause flooding problems. So we believe there should be a definition that would prevent anyone from filling in their property above, 2 feet above. That would be finished grade.
Now, are you
I'm
Talking
sorry.
about, again, restricted to the downtown historic district?
Yes. Again, people come here when they see the historic district. And from that point on, then they look, if they decide to come here and retire, they look anywhere in the city. But our purpose is to try and maintain the historic nature of the downtown area, and by putting in some either current regulations as they are now or some additions to them, we feel that we don't want to kill the goose that laid the golden egg. If the historic district does not continue to attract people, then the city will not grow. And we want growth, but again, we want that historic district, which is the heart of the community, to remain in a positive way. We also have a concern about the 60-foot height allowance in the commercial waterfront overlay district. We recommend that it should be no more than 44 feet above mean sea level measured to the corner slot, and I believe that's what's in the ordinance now. And the 60-foot height is a change, so we think we should revert back to what's there, 44 feet above mean sea level. On the positive side, there's a step-back provision that appears to promote a very concept in building design that would add to the rhythm of the roof lines in downtown. And so we'd encourage that. And I think that's probably all about the height issue.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff.
Could I address those comments?
Yeah, sure.
Specifically with regards to the waterfront overlay, it's not actually in this article, but if you have your copy here on page 71, if you look at line 2,746, what you can see is that we've actually, at the very beginning of the article for waterfront overlays, we've defined height as being measured from the mean sea level. So what we say is height shall be defined as the vertical distance between mean sea level and the highest point of a building, and that's for the waterfront overlay. And so we pulled out further references to mean sea level in the article because it was redundant. We're still measuring from mean sea level in the waterfront overlay, so that actually hasn't been changed. It's just been reformatted so that we say the same words less. There's less redundancy in there. So that's not actually a change. That's not something that's been altered. And I would also like to say that in the commercial waterfront overlay, right now the existing today cap on height is 66 feet, and we haven't proposed to change that. That's the commercial waterfront overlay. The maximum allowable height is 66 feet, not including rooftop appurtenances such as elevator shafts and cupolas and spires and things of that nature. And we've not proposed to change that to 60 feet or any other number. It is how it's written today.
In that zoning chart, there are a number of references to 60 feet, not 66.
That's
and
to
that extends through a number of commercial district zones.
The waterfront overlay takes precedence over that because it's a specific zoning overlay that applies its new criteria. And so while some of those would fall under the 60-foot height that we've proposed, were they not already in the waterfront overlay, they are in the waterfront overlay. So the 66 from mean sea level applies, not the 60 from finished grade that the chart would imply. So the waterfront overlay is actually, we're not actually increasing or even changing at all the maximum allowable height within the commercial waterfront overlay.
Okay.
Just for another point of clarification, through the ordinance, when we removed the references to conditional use and using that as an avenue to increase height, when we removed that, that's why we had to change the maximum in the waterfront overlay district, because that was the mechanism to get above 44 feet, was to go through the conditional use permit process. With that process gone, as you see with the other height table, where we've removed the ability to increase height through conditional uses, we have now established a maximum. So we're just being consistent with the process that we've established in the ordinance as a whole by removing the existing methodology to increase height and just establishing that maximum cap that's consistent with what is out being built today. So the methodology is consistent throughout the ordinance. We haven't changed maximum heights per se. We've established a consistent and very easy to understand cap on height, so everybody knows what's going on when they get into this.
Didn't some of the increase in heights come from measuring to the top of the roof rather than the cornice
Correct.
line?
That's exactly
So
right, yeah.
which allowed.
That's why the number is higher. We
The
did a
number's
survey
higher,
of-
because we're measuring.
Yeah.
It was thought in some of the groups that working groups that we had, that the cornice line really
Is ambiguous.
Yeah, it didn't really matter a whole lot. If you're looking at the skyline of New Bern, it's the top of the roof that has the impact to the height, which blocks view and everything else. It's not the cornice line. It's the roof, top of the roof, especially on pitched roofs. That's and you'll see in your example in the ordinance that is what is being measured and used as an example. And I think it makes a lot of sense to use the top of the roof, which is the true visual impact.
And easily defined, I think, more importantly.
Yeah.
Whereas cornice lines sometimes can be blurred, you know.
I think the city's had a lawsuit or two about cornice lines in the past. So, yeah, I know. Nancy? Okay.
Nancy Hollis. In the waterfront overlay on page 71 that Brad referred to, in the first paragraph, 15474, required conformity, it's talking about height, okay? And it's talking about the commercial district, commercial and residential should be the same. And so it should be measured from above sea level. And it not being in there is, it might seem redundant, but I believe it needs to be there. Also, in residential, it's measured to the cornice line. Why would we take that out? Cornice line is where the wall meets the horizontal plane of the roof. And a gable and a hip roof, as you know, soften the stark square flat roof. And we have some wonderful flat roof buildings in New Bern. So I think the intention of our group was that within the historic district, we need to go to the cornice line, because the cornice line can get high, the height of the building can go up to 50 feet. And have an interesting next level, including a step back level, but it also would encourage gables rather than just flat roofs. So the trouble you might have with cornice line might be that you think of cornice as some sort of entablature on the building or crown around the building, but it really is where the sidewall meets the horizontal plane of the roof. And for that reason, 44 feet above mean sea level would still give you a 50-foot height if you wanted it to the cornice line, 44 feet to the cornice line. It was not by right that you could go to 66 feet. You had to go through a conditional use permit, and we believe that needs just to be looked at again. The other item that we talked about, and it does affect the waterfront overlay district, and we understand about waterfront overlay districts, but we weren't clear on what are the boundaries of the waterfront overlay district? Where do they start? Do they start at Lawson Creek? And how far up the Neuse do they go? does the waterfront overlay district go?
Is that not defined
Yeah, it's,
geographically on the map?
We have a map of that. I don't have it with me on
It's
hand.
not online.
But
It's not online.
Okay.
we keep it in our office.
I handed you like 3 copies of it, Nancy, over the past.
But there is
I
a
didn't
there is a
Every-
geographical boundary to
Absolutely.
Every single meeting that you've come to that we've discussed, that map has been present and
Yeah.
passed around the room.
Yes.
Well, I've got that map.
Okay.
Thank you. We do feel like viewshed protection, we went into great depths in our discussions about viewshed protection, as Mr. Mansfield said, of the views coming into the city, and that's why we're asking for an exception for the downtown historic district, that the total height of a building be 50 feet, prefer it to be 35 to the cornice line to encourage some interesting roof lines and not just big boxes all along the street. And that was for viewshed protection. Some of you got this report, I don't know if everybody did, from our meetings, but as Mr. Mansfield said, Jeff and Bradley have been very, very informative and helped us to walk through all this. Of course, we have a little bit of a historic preservation perspective because it means economics, good economics for our city. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, Brad.
My name is Lorelei Schaffhouse, and I live at 511 Metcalf Street. And I'll be the first to admit that I don't understand a whole lot of these terms or a whole lot of how you're measuring what. But what I really do want to be sure that you understand that this small group, and that's where I heard Joe say, well, a small group's been meeting, that represents over 500 citizens in this community. So there may only be a few people here, but I hope you see the faces of every single one of us who came to especially the downtown historic district because we fell in love with the look of this town and what it means to us, and not just dollars and cents, but emotionally. Downtown New Bern has an emotional attraction to people. And if you change the character of this particular part of town, you risk losing what brings people here. And people are probably tired of hearing of the townhouses on the circle, but I can tell you, my visitors who come and look at it, where it obstructs the clock tower from certain parts of the waterfront, will tell you from the waterfront it looks like an institution. Somebody said to me who came from Florida recently, it looks like a prison. Why did you put a prison on your waterfront? So please understand, they understand the measurements and all of that, and I don't, but please, as you consider this, keep in mind what this town represents and hopefully will continue to represent in the future. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Joe, did you have your hand up a minute ago?
In that discussion about Columbus line, 35 versus 60.
You might step to the microphone.
Apologize, I should have sat closer to the microphone. In that discussion about Cornice Line at 35 feet versus 60 feet that's in the charts, we like to encourage varied development. And in terms of maximizing profit, it would be very easy for the developer just to go 60 feet straight up. And that would conform to the rules and regulations. So unless you break that somehow or other, you're going to have square buildings. And that, I don't think, is consistent with the downtown historic district. While we have a few of them, We have a few residences that are square, and we know that. But take a look at the vacant properties in the downtown area, and they're rather large. And you could see a developer would easily just decide 60 feet, I'll build 60 feet square. And that would not be a good thing for the city.
Just to add to add on to Mr. Mansfield was saying, he's talking specifically about the commercial overlay district. I mean, the commercial waterfront overlay district, which is a very small portion of property that we have along the Trent from the train tracks over to
Union Point.
To Union Point. So that's the area that we're talking about. It doesn't cross east front or south front. It's a small area. It doesn't encompass the entire historic district, 60 feet.
So the waterfront commercial is where Sheraton is and the
Correct.
Scottsdale.
That's the one area that he's talking about. Everywhere else outside of that, in the residential waterfront overlay district is 44 feet. From mean sea level, which is about a 35-foot building.
How far inland from that commercial come? To south front?
East, yeah, south front, east front. That's it. So it sounded like it might have been all encompassing. I just want to be clear that we're talking about an area of town that's commercial already.
Okay. I had one question I need to get clear in my mind. Is we have two measurements for base elevation to just talk about. One is sea level and the other is finished grade. Now, sea level is at Waterfront District and so forth has been there forever, I think. And Joe, I thought I heard you say that you wanted that changed.
No, one of that, I think 44 feet is the limit.
But the base measurement is from sea level. Okay. Okay. And
The difficulty is if you go to the other side of Front Street, then the 60-foot kicks in. So you would easily have a parapet wall facing waterfront overlay. That would still be.
okay. The other base benchmark measurement, of course, that we've talked about is finished grade, which is something that can be manipulated. And I think Joe mentioned there is no limit to that per se in this ordinance that you know, how much fill you can bring in and how far you can elevate from that, which is I know our work group talked about that extensively, and that we felt like there should be some cap to how much fill and elevation can occur on a site, because it can impact the total height of the building and as relates to surroundings and so forth. I think, Joe, you talked about 2 feet above the next lowest, or the lowest lot or whatever. You know, you can also use the center line of the street as a benchmark, as that's not moving, or the curb or whatever. But I think that there should be some consideration talked about to maximize, have a cap on the amount of fill that can be put on the natural grade that exists at the present time to elevate the building height. This is the thought. And that was something that our work group was concerned about, was the manipulation of final grade.
Just add a few things to that, Mr. Chair.
Joe, you got a comment, you got to come up so we can hear you.
Before Mr. Mansfield speaks, can I just add a little bit there?
You can have final word.
Okay, well, I just want to clarify, because there's a few different ways that we start at the base, it's not just two. So, before you get started, Joe, just a minute. So we have mean sea level, and that's in the waterfront overlay districts, both commercial and residential. Then we have how we do it when you're in the 100-year floodplain, which is the base flood elevation plus 2 feet of fill. And that's it. So in those areas, if you're outside of the overlay districts, the commercial and residential waterfront overlay districts, and when you move out of that, you're in the flood zone anyways. So as you move into the flood zone, where you start measuring is base flood plus 2. So you can add 10 feet of fill, but we're not going to start measuring. We'll measure at 2 feet, right? So you'll be penalizing yourself in those situations. The areas where we are concerned with now, what we're talking about as far as finished grade, is is all the areas outside the city that aren't in the waterfront overlay district or in the 100-year flood zone, where we don't establish what finished grade or how much fill you can bring onto your lot of finished grade. So just so we're all on the same page.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think I said it earlier that we agree that this is for outside the floodplain, that we're proposing grade level plus 2 feet. We understand in the floodplain you have to fill in order to get to the 2 feet above floodplain. And so our contention is use the same 2 feet as a measurement, and then everything will be consistent. It is conceivable that, as Jeff said, you start measuring height above the 2 feet, even in the floodplain. But that could still allow somebody to fill in above that. And instead of using the first floor, he could use it as fill to get the building up, the views above that. Admittedly, he'd be wasting time and wasting space that he could use for rental property or personal use. But I think it still should be something that is definitely capped so that a developer can't come in and interpret the ordinances the way he wants to.
I would like to also comment that within the historic districts, the locally designated historic districts, anytime someone does any development on a lot there, they need to get approval from the HPC, unless they're just replacing something that's already existing. And our definition of development includes change of grade. So somebody looking to come in and fill on a lot before putting a house within the context of the local districts, which all of downtown is part of, would need to get aesthetic approval. So you're not going to end up with something unsightly, because that is going through that level of oversight of the appointed Historic Preservation Commission, who are appointed in the same manner that you are. And they're usually people who have very strong ties or interests in the historic district, and they're a very strong and dedicated board, and that's traditionally true as well.
So you're saying there's another layer of protection against extreme field work within the historic district?
That's correct.
Okay. Questions, concerns for the staff or any of our residents from the board? Board would entertain a motion to do something about Article 12.
Before we do that, I have a question.
Sure.
We held up the final grade question till later. I mean, Article 2, because of the final grade question. Is this going to solve it, what we're talking about now?
Yeah, that first definition was to fit about finished grade, but it is a very broad, that definition is broad-based and not talking about all the specifics that are, you know, in the different overlays and everything else that we have to deal with. It's, I would guess the interpretation would be that in that definition in Article 1 or whatever it was, that basically was a broad brush across everything other than the specific overlays that are addressed individually in this ordinance. Is that fair statement?
Yeah, that's very accurate, Mr. Chair. And more so, as we work into the overlays and we talk about fill or no fill or what that is, that becomes the finished grade. So it kind of references back to the broad definition of what finished grade is where you're done, right? But if you wanted to add any kind of requirements to what that is in the overlays, then we would put it there. And your finished grade would be whatever existing grade plus 2 or some whatever the board feels. I do have some concerns with the language, though. I mean, I share the concerns of the group, and we've talked about this for a long time, and yeah, they know where I'm at. And it's really just time and money to do this right, and that's what it comes down to, is adding cost and time to the development, and whether we're solving a problem or not, a perceived problem or a real problem. But I'm here to listen, and I'll do whatever the board recommends. My only concern with this language that they proposed in the emails to you is that it references adjacent lots. 2 feet, within 2 feet of your adjacent lot. What if your lot is 6 feet above your two lots adjacent to you, do you have to cut down, you're taking away 4 feet of dirt so you can meet the rules of what this is? So those are the kind of things where if this is where we're going, I think it's as simple as saying, don't add more than 2 feet of fill to your property, and not reference other properties or anything like that. We'll just have to handle it as an enforcement side on our end when we are out, making sure people comply with the ordinance. But it's definitely worth discussion.
What's the board's feeling about this article and the height issue? Does it need more discussion? Table this, or we go forward with it? Well, we've been talking about it for a long time.
Well, it's the same sticking point it's always been, where we're measuring from and where we're measuring to.
Yeah.
Right, we still don't have that ambiguity eliminated, it's still there. And the confusion and everything on how we're gonna do our measurements, how the measurements are done, it's still there, and the confusion is still there. And I just think we need to table it until there's some of that confusion is eliminated from this article.
I'm not sure tabling it's gonna solve this problem. That's why, because we've talked about this for fairly well.
We're like at an impasse, and what do we do?
Yeah, and that's where we are right now is we're finished grade, measuring to cornice lines versus roof. I mean, I personally like measuring to the roof as a visual impact measurement. Finished grade, I've always had trouble with finished grade because it's manipulable to an extent, and that's why I thought that it may be a cap, but then you have to find another benchmark.
Right.
And when you go to a cap, and with soil conditions that are in New Bern, there's sometimes you need 1 foot, sometimes you need 4 feet to stabilize building structures and so forth. So it's I don't know that it gets solved greatly. It appears that that with the overlays of concern, waterfront districts, commercial waterfront, and then what Brad has commented about with the Historic District Commission and final grade being a point that can create denial of a permit. Did I interpret that right?
If they propose a development involving a substantial amount of fill, it would create an adverse aesthetic that could be disapproved because it would break the form and the rhythm of the neighborhood or the street.
That we might have, we probably have some safeguards in place to move forward with this, because I don't know how to solve it. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I have no idea, because we've been talking about height for over a year. I know Joe's tired of talking about it. We're tired of hearing about it, and we've come to we've done better. We've eliminated some measurements. In the old ordinance, there were even more variables involved in it, and now we're down to sea level and final grade, except for the floodplain issue. And I don't know that there's if somebody has the solution, we're willing to listen to it, but it's not coming from me.
It's hard to put a number to cover the entire city, because you can't say, for example, it's 9 feet over mean sea level, because that may work here, but not 2 miles away. So I don't know how we can solve this problem.
What do other cities do?
Well, they tackle the same issue, the same questions. Personally, I dealt with this in Florida with bringing too much fill onto a property. People were dredging out canals and taking the spill and dumping it up on the side to build their property over time up out of the floodplain. And it became an issue. But at the end of the day, we have the same side, same, what do we do? And it came down to coming out and having a surveyor shoot the elevation in the beginning, and we had a 4 foot of fill rule, and shoot the elevation at the end to make sure that it was in that, and it was time and money, and that's what it was.
What about the cornice and the rooftop? Did you all discuss that too?
No, not like we have here. We've we've shut it out of the park here as far as cornice and roof line. But we've surveyed 20, 25 municipalities, maybe more, throughout the state, and it's a mixed bag. There is no consistency on cornice or roof line, maximum height. It's whatever. And even in some cities, they do it cornice in some sections of town. They do maximum height in other sections of town. It's all based on zoning district, really. So, we're looking to other places isn't solving our problems. We just need to look at what we want to do here in New Bern and what's best for the community and make a decision and move forward.
It seems like from the discussion that if we could think about what Jeff just said about a maximum cap and fill from existing elevation, not including the floodplain, because that's a different animal altogether, that there might be some, because I know Joe talked about it earlier, that his recommendation was 2 feet, that there might be some meeting of the minds to come to an elevation, a fill cap that would solve a lot of issues around the city.
Well, that would work unless you were in between 2 buildings already. 4 feet may be too high.
Well, again, I go back right to the first time I probably responded to this issue. Well, my question is, where's the problem? Point me to a structure that has been built so far out of character from its community by someone bringing in fill or doing stem wall construction that we need to actually create a rule to stop it.
Generally, it's unpractical.
And I can't find it, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have any more comments, Joe, there, Mr. Mansfield?
Joe, did you have another comment you would like to share with us?
Jeff said something there, and we were proposing 2 feet above neighboring lots. And he said he'd be happy with 2 feet without the neighboring lots. And I can't speak for the group, but personally, I think if you take a measurement that says grade level plus 2 feet, that's definitive, that's clear, nobody can argue with it. Nobody can go to HBC and try and get around it. If HBC changes the nature of the current board, who knows what they can or will approve. Yes, they've been good in the past, but they've also approved some things that we thought were disastrous for the city.
But we'll need to factor in situations where you talked about soil conditions where.
Well, that's the thing, is there a variance process
It'll
in
probably
that?
have to just be some kind of engineering report that
Yeah.
says, here's what it has to be. It'll be approved by me or someone, the Director of Public Works or something like that.
We have similar language for other provisions.
Yeah.
Like that. It sounds good because it has something definitive, to this.
What, any further thoughts about this fill issue? Anybody have any thoughts about?
Are we gonna try to tie that to a particular zoning, a particular zone, or are we gonna do that across the board? What's our?
It'll be outside
Of the overlays?
of the overlays and the 100-year flood. It'll be all the other property in the city. Which will capture some of the historic district.
And I can live with a 2-foot cap if there's a variance.
Yeah, there's gonna need to be a variance because.
A variance
often-
process that with engineering reports requiring
Yeah, I
some.
would call it a variance, because that sticks us into the Board of Adjustments. I would say just an engineering report that states you need this much fill to stabilize a structure of life safety, whatever that language
Or
is.
for stormwater, or for,
Sure.
it could be any number of things with the,
Yeah.
once you get above, a certain size piece of property.
Sure, yeah.
You get all sorts of, authorities having jurisdiction involved.
Yeah.
they're gonna dictate some things.
Yes.
Okay, I think we've beat this as far as we're going to. Like I say, the chair will entertain a motion of any kind on what to do with Article 12.
It's more than just, it's a couple of paragraphs, what we just talked about, the ad, right? We accept Article 12 with the caveat that we have to, that would be 2 foot maximum fill from existing grade, but we also have to throw in the variance situation too.
Yeah, so what you're saying is,
However we word that, I don't know.
We'll come back, how about?
you want to table
guys
that?
work through the motion, approve the other stuff, we'll come back with language next month.
That works for me.
It shouldn't take long.
Okay, we have a motion to approve, subject to, except, with the exception of building heights and finished grade measurement,
Finished grade.
finished grade.
Great. Building heights, we're okay.
Except for those two.
Building heights in Article 12.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll move that we accept it with
With the exception of
exception of the
Finished
final
grade
grade.
definition.
finished grade definition.
Outside the special flood hazard overlay and waterfront overlay districts.
Okay.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Does everybody understand what we're doing?
Yes.
Okay, and
Scary
we're
part is
approving
what we
all the
do,
rest
that's
of
the scary
Article 12 with the exception of finished grade. And because we're doing that, the table of the finished grade definition will stay in place until that same meeting, okay?
Byron, did you second that?
Yes, Byron seconded the motion.
Thank you.
Any further discussion about the motion? Okay,
So that would automatically then table Article 2,
yes,
conversation.
yes. Well, it's already been tabled.
Yeah,
It-
but I
it
mean,
I'm not sure
sustains,
if it does, but it's fine.
it sustains that table.
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor of the motion to approve Article 12 with the exception of finished grade? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay?
Okay. Okay. Moving on, Article 14. Article 14 starts on page,
It's 49? Nope. 48. I could be wrong again. Yeah, 48.
got to turn it upside down. Okay. The main topics within Article 14 are connectivity of residential development, connectivity of commercial development, and sidewalks. These are significant additions to the land use ordinance that have never really been there before. So I think they
Need some-
bear some discussion. I know from a development standpoint, the connectivity of residential development states that streets need to be continued to and built to the adjacent property line where a street is anticipated to be from the adjacent property. I have a little bit of trouble with that in that we're going to potentially might be doing a lot of crystal balling as to where that connectivity might be occurring on the adjacent property if there's not a land plan in place. and also to build a curb and gutter street to the property line that goes nowhere. I have concerns about that from the cost of development perspective also. When you do that, you also, in the initial development, when the next parcel gets developed and connects to you, you're going to incur a certain amount of additional traffic through the existing development. But there is a clause in there that says that unless that you don't have to connect, if there's going to be a great increase, significant increase in through traffic. But when we're sizing streets in a development initially, we're sizing the streets for for what we're doing, the initial development. We're not sizing streets to improve the property next door and the value of the property next door. So that connectivity concept has some concerns to me that I think are worth talking about. And then the issue of sidewalks, all 4 sidewalks, but the way this is written, we're going to be creating sidewalks to nowhere. Because if there's a gap in development within 500 feet of each other, you got a sidewalk that ends here and a sidewalk that ends here, and there's nothing in between unless the city wants to build it. And I don't know how often that's going to occur on a vacant piece of property to connect all those things. So, and the other thing with sidewalks is that sidewalks are required in all subdivisions now, all residential subdivisions. There used to be a lot width rule that did that, but now it's in all subdivisions, which I don't have a problem with, except that in the development process, there's no timing mechanism for building the sidewalks. For instance, if to get final plat approval, if you have to have all the improvements in place, then the sidewalks are there. But then when you go to build houses over a 3-year period, you're tearing up all the sidewalks and having to replace them. And I would like to see some sort of, I think it would be appropriate to have some sort of mechanism that deals with that from a timing or a bonding situation to allow the sidewalks to be installed as the homes are built, and with a cap on time, that if it's not done in 3 years, the developer still has to, a time period, still has to go in and finish the sidewalks even through unbuilt upon lots, so that there is connectivity for the residents that are there to enjoy the sidewalk and the pedestrian ways. Or my comments about sidewalks and residential connectivity.
You said a mouthful there, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, okay.
I think we can address, maybe go backwards, and if we miss things, we're just trying to clarify and explain what we're trying to do here and what it says. As far as the sidewalks go and the bonding or the fee in lieu, we tried to get a fee in lieu charter amendment, essentially, with the last go-round that failed at the Board of Aldermen level, whereby someone could, if there were sidewalks required, they could simply pay into a fund that the city would have to install sidewalks. That didn't pass. It's not the end of the world. We also, we routinely bond product. We routinely bond subdivisions right at the final stage, right? So that final coat of asphalt and landscaping are 2 things we bond out on every subdivision pretty much, because they want to get all that stuff.
Right, but
Sidewalks, but it only lasts a year, that's the problem. So
yeah, but it can be renewed.
Cannot be renewed.
The bond cannot be renewed now?
Sure,
Yeah.
I mean, it's up to
Yeah.
us.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now sidewalks are a demanded, required improvement,
Correct.
like asphalt and water and sewer and so forth. So I can't imagine why they wouldn't be added to the bondability of the subdivision now that it's a actual requirement in the land
No,
use
we
ordinance.
can bond it, absolutely can. Yeah.
But it has to get approved, right?
No, that process exists now. So
Okay.
we can, anything that's not finished on the final plat, we bond that out. So we can do that.
Okay.
We can bond sidewalks,
Oh,
absolutely.
what failed?
A financing mechanism whereby a developer can say, I have $100,000 worth of sidewalks that need to be put in. Bond, you have to put up a bond, right? So there's a few different ways. That's cash. It's a piece of it, 120% of the improvement. With a fee in lieu, you would just put the money into a fund. It would be 100%, not 120%. Where then the city could go in and use it a little in regions instead of in one place, but a little more flexibility. But the application of it, we never got to, and how we really put the money on the ground. We were just trying to create the ability of the city to establish a fund for sidewalks, a fee in lieu fund, and that didn't make it. But we can still bond out required improvements that are under final plat. That's still very doable. We do that all the time. It's just it's different.
Okay.
A little more, probably a little more difficult on the developer side to do. It all depends on who it is, I guess, too.
I mean, at some point, it becomes cheaper to put the sidewalks in, even though they're gonna get tore up, than continuing to
Well,
renew
yeah,
a bond.
we wouldn't want to create a situation where sidewalks are required to get run over by heavy equipment, right? So that's something that we.
Yeah, I mean,
we would work
that's the whole issue, is everybody's wasting money then.
Yeah, and so we would never want that to happen. So we'd work through that.
Okay.
Whatever program or process that we would need to, where we could work it out individually with each developer. And I'm going through policy here in my head while we're here, but it's something that we both share as a concern, that we'll make sure that doesn't happen. So that was just that sidewalk. So we do have a mechanism where we can probably address your concern there as far as putting in sidewalks that are just gonna get torn up. The 500-foot rule, you know, you're exactly right. It is what it is. Let's say, I'm trying to find the right term for it. It's a pretty aggressive approach, right, to sidewalks. It's the city's attempt to build a spine network off of the major sidewalk. We have a sidewalk plan that establishes major spines of where sidewalks and pedestrian amenities should be located in the city. The section that deals with the 500-foot rule kind of establishes a spine off of those major corridors. So where you're building, where sidewalks already exist, you're required to start to backfill these sidewalks as you get out into the communities to provide connectivity from the single family lot out in Bern to Lawson Street Park at some point in time through a sidewalk system. That's a pretty aggressive sidewalk stance. Then we take a first step really is what we're doing is we're just trying to implement the sidewalk plan that was approved in 2009. So there's two sections on sidewalks. It's if you are in a development that is adjacent to an area that has sidewalks or some kind of pedestrian amenity, a greenway path or something like that that's identified on the 2009 plan, you're going to be responsible to build whatever that amenity is, which is what we've been doing piecemeal over time, but we could only implement it through the Board of Adjustments. So that's where you really start to get sidewalks to nowhere. But generally speaking, the intent of the sidewalk language in this ordinance is to not create sidewalks to nowhere. You have sidewalks that actually all lead to a centralized pedestrian network. And if there happen to be gaps in coverage over time, that's when the city can then invest its funds to fill in those gaps at a smaller level instead of the grand scale.
In the way the ordinance is written, is there a requirement that the developer builds sidewalks anywhere other than on his property?
I don't believe so. All right?
I don't think so, but I
don't
want
think so,
clarification
yeah.
about that.
That sounds a little crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely
that's-
not. Come on, Ken. We wouldn't do anything
Hey,
crazy.
I've seen other places where that kind of stuff
Sure,
goes
no,
on.
I have too, no, but we wouldn't do that. I wouldn't support anything like that. That doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
sidewalks, and of course, we can have any conversation you want about anything that we've talked about tonight, but as far as connectivity goes, that is a major shift of this ordinance, as you identified. It's something that's important to us as land development professionals, trying to review these things and trying to factor in, creating safe environments for people to travel, and connectivity, especially between commercial developments, is very important. The connectivity between the residential, these are public streets at the end of the day. If the developer wants to turn them over, which many times they do, then we really should have a system that connects them so the system can function at a higher level. If they want to be private streets, then the developer is free to do whatever he so chooses to. But if they're creating a street system that's not interconnected, that's putting more trips onto roads that really don't need to have trips on them, that really in the long run will push up the cost of the city. They'll have to improve these streets, fix these streets, add capacity, add turn lanes. What we want is that internal connectivity. And if we're being asked to take over maintenance and responsibility of these roads, we should have a say in how they work together. So that's what we're trying to do.
And I really don't have a lot of trouble with that, except we're building street, you're requiring us to build a street. I can understand that if a road is going out and hitting a T, that maybe it needs to go forward, have a dedicated right-of-way shown. It's okay, I don't have a trouble with that, but actually having to build the street and it ends up 200 feet off the main road, and then it's not dead ends at somebody's property line, I don't see a lot of sense in that. In the cost of building 200 or 300 feet of curb and gutter street that might be 35 feet wide.
Yeah,
It's fairly expensive.
Yeah, and I've seen other places, I've worked in other communities where it was just a dedicated right-of-way, right? And especially in an area where there's no master plan and there's really no way to coordinate with adjacent landowners or anything like that, that's when it works, and you just stub out a 50-foot right-of-way on your final plat dedicated to the public for public right-of-way purposes. And it's something that if it's important in the future for the community, for the city, we will go in and build that little chunk to connect two areas to alleviate traffic from a certain thoroughfare or something like that. So that's possible also. It's important to maintain the ability to have interconnections. It really is.
Yeah.
As written, this doesn't preclude a developer from proposing it. I don't think it would preclude you from, as a developer, saying, we propose to designate a right-of-way on our final plat in lieu of.
There is a statement in there that said, and build.
And build too.
And build too.
It is in there.
And that's, I guess, and I'm, like I say, dedicating the right-of-way, I think is reasonable and acceptable, but requiring the actual construction of the road that just stops there from another intersection, I don't think is reasonable. I'm dedicating the right-of-way for future use if it makes sense to use it. Because like I say, the adjacent property, if there's no plan there or anything else, it might fit, might not fit to what the next developer is trying to do, unless the city departmental review makes them tie into that, then there's some semblance to that. But dedicating the easement, I think, makes sense. I don't think forcing that road, that section of road to be built makes sense.
I'm not sure if I addressed everything that you brought up, so.
Yeah, you did.
Anything else? Please
Well,
fire away.
the time period when the sidewalks have to be built, we probably should add that in there too. I don't know what a realistic number is. Should be 3 years after buildings are in, or 3 years after development started. That's 3 years is just the number I'm throwing out there.
Well, like I say, I think if you bond the sidewalks, it gets, there comes a point in time, if there's only 2 or 3 vacant lots left, it's a lot cheaper to build the sidewalks in there than it is to continue a bond process. So I think the bond.
Financially, they'll be forced to do it.
I think the bond, the market will kind of dictate that as to how long that person, whether they want to keep it bonded.
Okay.
Because the city, when the time comes to renew the bond, they can say, okay, sidewalks or renew the bond. and then the person can make an economic decision on which route they'd rather go. I mean, that's my opinion.
That works. That works. So do we need to amend this at all?
The only amendment I would like to see to it is that the,
Designated.
that we remove the clause that says that the road has to be built to the property line of the adjacent property,
And just to designate some.
but have it designated right away for future utilization.
Yeah, we can just really remove then the street developed. You can just put street right away.
Yeah, that's what it says in the
Yeah.
street developed.
Should we move to table this and do the same thing? You'll come up with the language?
Absolutely, I'll come back with language that y'all can approve.
So I'll move that we table it until the city comes up with a different language for that.
Okay,
Are we approving anything though?
Hmm?
I'd like to approve as much as we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can recommend approval of the thing with the deletion
Yeah.
of that statement.
That works.
Okay, yeah, then I'll move that we recommend approval of that with deleting the statement that you have to build a road up to property.
Okay.
And I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve section 14 with the removal of the section of the statement that requires the road to be built.
Yeah, I know.
I have a question. Mr. Chairman, should that be with the change of wording from having to build to dedicated right?
It says dedicated before it says and built,
Okay.
I believe.
Correct.
in the
That's
document.
exactly right.
Okay.
And
That-
shall be
that-
extended and the
yeah.
street developed to the property line.
Yeah.
So we'll get rid of that and the street developed, or make it an option. You can do both if you want to. But at a minimum, a right-of-way dedication.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any
Yeah,
further?
if it's an issue in the future for the developer, and we've done this with other plats, and I think we've done one in Carolina Colors, where there was a right-of-way dedication that you replatted away
Mhm.
when it was realized that you didn't need it, we didn't need it. So it's not, a
Yeah.
right-of-way on the plat doesn't mean that it's just sitting there forever. If things happen around it, and it's a valuable piece of property,
And I'm
simply
sure that's
replat it away.
exactly what Chip was talking about,
Mm-hmm.
because if you build it, then it's there.
Then it's there, correct,
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
And I'd rather have it be a green space in the
Sure.
neighborhood than a piece of asphalt sitting there with
Right.
impervious surfaces. So. Okay, any other questions, concerns about Article 14?
Did anybody second?
Yes.
Yeah, Barry seconded. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The next article is our favorite one, Article 18.
Do we skip 17?
17.
We approved 17.
Yeah, 17 was approved
Okay.
as a long, because the only thing that involved in Article 17 was removal of conditional use language.
Okay. I had it up there. Where you going?
We're going to 18, which, my concern, everybody's gonna laugh about this, because we've been laughing about this for a long time, is the requirement for a certain percentage of parking spaces in a commercial parking lot to be 10 feet wide.
10%. In developments greater than 50,000 square.
Yeah. I will note that the working group that we had here unanimously voted to eliminate that as an unmanageable and unenforceable requirement to force people to park.
No.
Unless you're gonna have some enforcement to it, or gonna have some signage requirements for it, saying, four-wheel drive pickup trucks park here. And it's also in the language, it's at the rear of the parking lot. Now, to force somebody in a pickup truck to go park as far away from the building, commercial building they're going to, I don't think it's practical or applicable.
We took 25% to you initially. That was our
Well,
first
I
proposal. That
know,
was the
but-
one you rejected, and this
but
10% you were fine
Again,
with.
if you're not gonna sign it and say, these are 10-foot parking spots, who's gonna know, I mean, I doubt that the average person riding through Harris Teeter's parking lot or Publix parking lot is going to notice a foot wider parking space and say, oh, I need to park there. And if it's crowded, the little car is gonna park in that 10-foot wide, which defeats the purpose of the big pickup truck parking space. So either we go all the way or no way with 10 foot.
So you want a large truck sign?
I'm surprised it made it this long, quite honestly. You know, it fought a hard fight, but I think it's time to go on that one.
I mean, I personally, I think parking spaces need to be longer for these big pickup trucks as much as they need to be, wider.
So let's just put the dagger in it.
Okay.
I'm sensitive to this because I have a large truck.
Yeah,
But
me
I,
too,
but I think I'm gonna make a motion that we recommend that, this, amendment is not approved,
To eliminate it.
to eliminate the amendment.
I'll second that.
Okay, so you're looking at approving Article 17 with the deletion of the. of the
18.
10-foot
18.
18, I get my number.
That's the only thing from Article 18 is the parking
Yeah, that's the
space.
only
That's
thing
the only
we
thing,
did,
so.
right?
Okay.
Yeah, so I think we're just gonna
We're talking
eliminate.
about lines, 2184, 2185.
We are talking about lines 2170 to 2187 on page 57.
Right, okay, yeah. We're gonna just remove that part with the large vehicles.
And then we gotta go to, the planting requirements and take that out.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
some knock-on
Is
effects
that
of
in
this.
18 as well?
It's not.
That is in 19.
Yeah, that's the letter.
That we approve.
Well, we'll take that out.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to eliminate Article 18. Just that portion of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Large parking spots.
Yeah.
Eliminate the proposed amendment.
Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And that is the end of the articles that we pulled out of the review suggested by the board. So with just a few minor changes and 2 tabled articles, I think we've accomplished everything that needed to be accomplished this evening. I did have a couple other comments. In the waterfront district, you have a rear yard setback of 35 feet off of the water.
Sounds like the News River buffer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the News River buffer is 50 feet.
It's 2.
You got a 30 and a 20.
Oh, so it's a total of 50, so 30, you can't do anything, the 20 is.
20, you can do something, but it has to be vegetated. I don't think you can
Correct.
actually build in it.
Usually not, absolutely.
And
30
plus you have the
sometimes.
CAMA's area of environmental concern. So I was just wondering if that needs to be checked out and coordinated, that 35 feet is something that can happen.
Yeah, we'll look into that.
And the final thing of my comments is on the table of uses. It is not in, if we could, since we're into rearranging things, when you start into the commercial zones, you jump all around with the numbering and stick some industrial zones in the middle and then go back to some commercial zones.
Where are we, in the table itself?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the actual columns.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, C5 before you get to C1 and.
Yeah.
And
Well, we never had it, we had a C6 zoning designation without any uses in it, so.
Correct.
That's, so we stuck it on the end.
Yeah. So,
But, yeah, we'll, so you just wanted some kind of alphanumeric order?
yeah, I think it, you know,
Yeah,
the
that makes sense.
residential stuff kind of follows a decreasing lot size
Yeah.
structure, so
Sure.
I'm just thinking we might go that way.
Yeah.
Or just
Yeah.
number it in sequence or something so that
Doesn't appear
it
to be random.
doesn't appear so randomly,
Yeah.
right?
Are you still fine with agricultural, residential, commercial, industrial?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of an intensity of use
It's just
hierarchy.
just the structuring
Right.
of the headings.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so that takes care of our topic there.
So we'll be coming back with language on, we have language for finished grade and how we're gonna deal with that. And do we have other language or clarification? No, we're just gonna remove the build to
Yeah,
stuff.
finished grade
14.
is the definitions.
That's-
Finished grade
Finished
continues
grade.
the rule.
Yep, okay.
Couple other, just one other comment. Appendix C that we reference in this document, I've mentioned before, is in conflict to the policies of the electric department and the water department.
Okay, and what is appendix C?
I know Appendix C. It is our streets manual.
Streets manual.
And what they've done is they've adopted a new one, which makes this old one that's in our ordinance outdated.
Okay.
But for months, I've been trying to get a copy of the new one, which the Public Works Department and the Engineering Department has, but
Alright.
they are not forthcoming.
So we need to, do we have appendix C in the ordinance? Is it
Yeah.
in it? So we should just reference it, take it out, so we can just have their manual.
Well, their one's supposed to be updated in the ordinance. It's never been pushed.
But I don't wanna be putting other people's
Yeah,
ordinances
and
in the land
there were
development.
two things about that drawing, which is referenced several times. One is the location of the water meter versus electric lines, because the electric department wants to charge the $375 to go over a water line, and so that needs to get resolved. And there's no place on there for natural gas where it fits in that.
In the
plan.
existing one or in the new one that they have?
Haven't seen the new one.
Okay, well then we'll get that.
Okay, and it's just comment. Okay. Under new business, we have a report from the nominating committee that was appointed at the last meeting.
Yeah, Jimmy, Bill Hunt, Barry Evans, and myself, we met, excuse me, on June 16th to come up with some names. Part of the problem was that there's going to be a lot of names missing next month. But what we did come up with was we'd like to nominate either Raymond Latan or Dorothea White, and what we'd like to do is one or the other would be the chair and the vice chair, if you guys were willing to accept that. Is anyone, either one of you, willing to accept the nomination for chair?
Dorothea White's coming off, actually.
She is going to be on. Well, we weren't sure, that's why.
I gave you that list, remember?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sensing a setup.
So Ray, I think you're,
Sure, I will accept.
so I'd like to move that we nominate Ray for chairman of this committee for the next year.
What about vice chair?
Vice chair then was either myself or Barry Evans, and whichever one the board decides on. Because those are, we're the
Well,
only
the
we're the only ones
nominating
left.
committee comes up with one name
Yeah,
for the vice chairman.
Great, take it.
okay, then Barry,
Okay.
'cause he's been
And
here longer.
that's the report of the nominating committee. We will have the election at the next meeting. So the new board members, we're gonna have new board members in. We'll know who they're reporting to.
3 or 4.
I will chair the August 2nd meeting, and the first order of business will be the election of a new chairman. So I'll be here about 5 minutes, just to make that turnover, okay? Because I gotta go home and pack, because we're leaving the next day for Europe for 15 days, so. That's not in the minutes there. Okay, the last item, I'd like to have an update on the road situation with the sides project that was discussed in great length at the last meeting, and we were promised by the city attorney and everybody that there would be great effort put forth to resolve some of those road issues that we're on Old Airport Road.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At the following Board of Aldermen meeting, the city manager in his comments brought up your recommendation, this board's recommendation to do a transportation impact study, impact analysis along the airport road corridor. That I guess the board, I don't think they voted officially, but they decided not to move forward with that, with the understanding that they know that the road needs to be widened, and they are moving forward with action, specifically working with DOT to get the road widened. Met with Mark Stevens this morning and the new alderman for the ward, E.T. Mitchell, and there's been conversations with Mark at the division engineer level of DOT to get the conversation started. It looks like they are moving forward with some kind of partnership where DOT would widen the road to a certain width, and with the caveat that the city take over overall maintenance of the entire corridor. So that's where we are at now. We're still working on what that width should be.
Okay. What about the section from the bridge, the dirt road?
Yeah, that's not in DOT or city ownership, correct?
Right.
What, the
DOT owns that.
county line road?
Yeah.
Right, that's.
No, not county line, the section from the bridge to the entrance to the sides project, that's a dirt road now.
That is-
That,
I mean-
was supposed to be 20 feet.
Correct.
The city wanted it 31.
That's right, and I'm not sure if we, I mean, right now, obviously, the agreement is to build a 20-foot wide road. But with these conversations we've been having over the past few months, that I'm not sure if the construction has started up again. I know they stopped last week. They were off they're doing what they can before they get to a point where they need to make a decision on how wide the road is. But the discussion is for the overall length of Airport Road. So any resolution that we find for the entire length of Airport Road would be effective on the missing chunk right now. But again, we don't know what that width is, because there's a great cost associated with going over a certain width. It's about 28 feet wide. After that, it becomes extremely cost prohibitive along that corridor to build a street that's wider than that. So we're working through the details on trying to make the best decision we can at the time, so we don't have to go in and undersize the road when we're putting in all this time, effort, and money, and then realize in the future we actually should have done it a little wider. So we're tiptoeing through those details right now.
Okay. Any questions from the board about this? Because we heard a lot about this last month.
I'll have another update for you at your next meeting.
Okay. Any other items that need to be brought before the board this evening? If not, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Have a motion?
Second.
And a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Anybody want to stay here later?
You're welcome.